Hello everyone, today we're gonna do some RPG game making in Unity. Yeah, this is gonna be sort of a mini series, hopefully. So yeah, let's start it. So we're gonna start off to create a script called BaseCharacter. And this is gonna be a script that's gonna basically be on the player and the enemy and the NPC, all the characters you can think of. So let's open this up in Visual Studio. Let's see if it's open up. It shouldn't open up, but it doesn't open up. Why not? Oh man. Sometimes you wish is some things will just work. But anyway, yeah, it's okay, works here, but it's not having connection now, which is weird. I'm gonna just pause for a moment and fix this issue. Let's try this again. I also installed the new input system, which you can do via the package manager. It still doesn't work for some goddamn reason. Maybe it's because I have another Visual Studio project open, but it's, yeah, okay. So apparently I can't open have two files open, like two projects open, which is dumb because I need a reference to make this. So I'm just gonna open the reference real quick. Hopefully I can open the reference, otherwise this is stupid. But yeah, so I've seen some stuff from other people that have made sort of a RPG slash Dark Souls game to specifically YouTubers or like YouTube creator, whatever. Mostly they are bad at coding, especially when you're thinking of how you should integrate multiple scripts. I think they're doing very bad job at showing like how you can build a character script, sort of. So in this video I'm gonna show you. So first off, I like to remove everything from here and remove some spaces. I like to keep neat and clean. We are not gonna use any of these extension or like namespace, so we can remove this. So this is a base character, which is gonna be from MonoBehavior, and we want to make this abstract. This basically mean this keyword basically means that we are not going to be we need to create a new script, or like a add-on script, to basically be able to use this in Unity. So for example, if I just exit here for now and try to put this script on the camera, I can't, because this is abstract. So basically I need to create a new script, which is going to be the player script. So we can already do that, and that's going to inherit the we can go over here, inherent the base character. So basically we need to implement all the kind of stuff the base character needs. Now it doesn't implement any like MonoBehavior stuff because that is not abstract. So if we want to implement something, let's say take damage like this, and we can make this abstract, and then we don't need to have a body. Now in here we need to do then basically overwrite this, so we can implement this function in our player script. So this is very nifty for creating a sort of base character script, because let's say we have a enemy or like a boss or a NPC that's basically gonna have the same deal, but are not gonna be the same script, because let's say boss is gonna have multiple phases, where for example they're gonna do attack phase, then retrieve phase, then maybe run away phase, I don't know. But then the player is gonna load something like weapons, to the inventory or the hand slot or whatever. So you're gonna have different things for different like player and enemy basically. So this is very nifty, and this is the main concept that a lot of people doesn't use really. So keep in mind that this is a great concept to basically enforce some rules and then overwrite the rules. Anyway, we're gonna create a we're gonna have a attribute over here called require component. This is basically, it's gonna add a component when we add the script. This is very handy for Unity stuff. So we're gonna have a character controller. Basically this is gonna use character controller, so no rigid body in this middle, sadly. We can add a audio source if you want to, and we can add multiple other components if we want to, but for now we're gonna just add character controller. Now I like to have headers for separating the code, so it's more easily, not for the code specifically, but more the inspector for Unity to be more readable. So I'm gonna call this reference, and then here we're gonna have serialized field. This basically takes a private property or field and turns that into so the inspector can be shown basically. So serialized field, and we can then call this, let's say we can have animator and other kind of stuff, but we can add animator for now. We actually don't need the animator right now, but why the hell not? So we can do like this. So animator, call this m_animator. I like m_. Unity use that sometimes. It's just a prefix that you can use for serialized field basically. I specify it to be default. You don't have to use that, but it's a good way to practice. You can also do null if you want to, or default. That doesn't really matter in this case, but it's a good practice. The next thing we can do is, for example, have another header that's basically a config where we're gonna change some stuff. We can also call this settings. I like to name this config because we are configuring our player, or our character rather. And here we can basically do serialized field, and we can do for example acceleration. This is how fast we can move. I'm just gonna type it. Let's set this to 30. 30 for now. There we go. And we can also have like speeds, walk speed if we want to. Now I'm gonna have a default walk speed for now, but you can put like let's say 15 over here, then do sprint speed, and then basically have a boolean or like float or whatever, checking if you're sprinting or not. And if you are sprinting, then we're gonna set the value to basically this. And we set the value we sort of move. It's a method called move towards, and you can use the delta time multiplied by acceleration. So you move from our current speed to our target speed, which is, if you're sprinting, then it's gonna be sprint speed. Then we move by the delta time multiplied by acceleration. It's a little bit complicated, and it's not really necessary to explain right now, but that is basically the whole concept. We can use walk speed and sprint speed. Why the hell not? We can also use over here a private field, so we can have transform called camera or cam for now. Now we can specify camera, but our Unity will complain because somehow mono behavior, I believe it, no, it's a component, right? Yeah. Somehow this component, inside our component, we have reference to read the body camera, read the body 2D animation, all that kind of stuff. But somehow Unity has now removed this stuff, so it's no longer being used. But somehow it's still complaining. Still complaining when we call this camera, but we can call this cam for short. And we can also specify our character controller. Now we don't need to have a reference to character controller. We can do that, but because we have a required component, it basically means we're always gonna have a character controller, so we don't need to link it because we can do that in the script or in our methods. So we got a lot of stuff. We can also add a vector3 direction and a private float called speed. There we go. Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff here. So we're gonna move on to awake method. Now sometimes people use start method. I like to use awake method. The difference is that awake starts when the editor starts, and the start method basically means the start of the game object. So depending on like singleton, if you want to use singleton, for example, let's say we have a camera controller or audio manager or whatever, right? Then if we want to access the audio manager, in this case I don't have an audio manager, but let's say we did, then in a wake method it's probably getting initialized. So rather than using in a wake method, we want to use that in the start method. But in this case we don't want to access some singleton right now, so we can put this in a wake method, but that's just an heads down. So we're gonna start off to take our camera main transform. So we basically link the camera's transform to this variable. So that is pretty nice. Yeah, then we can do try get component out controller. Now this is a little bit new if you don't have really looked at this sort of method before. And the reason why I like to use this method because it's much nicer to have rather than using get component controller character controller. Let's see if I can spell this. Perfect. There we go. So rather than using this line, we use this line. Now what this method does is it uses a generic method. Basically it means we can specify which type we want to use, like the get component. Now we don't need to specify the type over here because we have a variable that's already specified which type we want to use. So we only need to use out controller, and you can see the line it's gaining is incredibly like shortened. So this is incredibly good for like shorten your code. And one thing that's very nice is it actually returns in Boolean. So if you want to get a component without being null, normally you would do like it component, let's say an audio source, then do if it's not null. And in I guess in newer videos or like newer updates, this will probably be to is not null. Now Unity has an implement, I guess it's C#9, it's still on C#8, so you can't do this right now, but I guess in the future you can do this because it's not null. You can do that in C#9. But like I said, in C#9 hasn't been added to Unity yet, so this is not possible now, but probably in the future. But most people just use this, then need a sort of variable, so let's call the source. You don't need to do this actually, this is just a demonstration. So we can do like this. Now this is very like, you have an if statement, then you have another like code or line of code that basically get a reference. You can replace that with only this. You can do this. So try to get component, and we can do audio source and source, and basically that. So now we got the source, right? So you can simplify by using try get component. Now if it's depending on the situation, you sometimes want to get component rather than try get component, but I found that it's more interesting to try to get component, but that's my taste. So we can close that down, and we can go to our update method. There we go. So one thing I'm gonna do before we start with the update method is basically we wanna change this from private to protected. Now the reason why I wanna do this, we also wanna add virtual, so we can overwrite this. Now protected basically means it's not public, but everything that is inheriting the base character can be shown. So let's say if we do a void test over here, and let's say speed, and let's set this to 10, right? Oh my god, my voice. Be right back. Always drink, kids, always drink. You can see it's not getting a speed variable because it's it's inaccessible. I don't know how you pronounce that, but whatever. Oh boy. Anyway, so we got that. My mouse is not working. I don't know why. Let's see if it's answer. And it doesn't answer. Yeah, now there we go. So you can see the speed variable is not getting any response, right? And that's because it's private. We can change that protected, so now we can access that. So that is very handy. Now, if we didn't use this, and let's say we have a base character, let's say call this character. My mouse doesn't want to be good behavior today. I'm gonna use a different mouse. Sorry for like the inconvenience, but this is my video, so hey. Whatever. So I'm gonna use this keyboard for my mouse. I don't know, my mouse has been recently weird today. And apparently this doesn't respond either. Wow. I need a new mouse. There we go. So we're gonna do character, then we're gonna do oh, I get a lot of stuff on my keyboard. There we go. So we're gonna do character, and we're gonna do, let's say, get component. Well, we can't do, okay, we need to specify mono behavior over here. Mono behavior. Then we can do get component, base character. Character. Then we can do speed. Oh, my voice, man. Okay, so you can see here over here, the speed is not getting access. This is because it's not public, it's protected. So this is very handy for this scenario. So hopefully you get the convenience about protected and private variables. Let's go back to our base character, and I'm gonna see here. There we go. So we're gonna do a void update, right? There we go. So we have not a lot of stuff to do over here. Now we can make this an abstract class, or sorry, an abstract method. But for now we can just avoid it, because if you want to implement some stuff, then do it. I have implemented in my previous script with Animator, but for now we can avoid Animator. So yeah. So we're gonna create a new method, gonna be called a move. Not OnAnimatorMove, but move. This method is gonna be handle the movement when we wanna move our character. Now this script is gonna be, or sorry, this method is gonna be a little bit long, but hopefully you should be able to see that. We can avoid this method and we're gonna create a new method because this method, move method, is gonna be it's gonna be end of this video. So if you want to see that method, then you can basically look at the timeline and check that method out. But for now, we're gonna do some other stuff. We're gonna do private void, and we're gonna do onController collider hit. Now this is basically a on collision event from our character controller, because on a rigid body a collider that has attached to a rigid body can then respond to an on collision event. Now that doesn't reply, that is not the same with character controller. So you need to use this method for the character controller to have a sort of collision response, right? Well, it has automatic collision response, but if you want to add more collision response, so here you can basically say body, we can do hit, collider, attach, rigid body, and we get our rigid body. We can say if a body, if the body is null, or the body is kinematic, meaning we can't affect this, we just return this. Then if we want to push something, we can add a push sort of force. How do you want to do that? Is basically if you are pushing, then we say true. And if we are if our hit move direction is less than minus 0.3 units or whatever, then we return them. Then we can basically say the y. Let's see, the y. There we go. Then we can basically say var direction. We can create a new vector3, and we can say hit move direction dot x. On the y is 0, and hit move direction dot z. So like this. Then we add a force. Add a force at that direction with a sort of force power, so we can do like turn, whatever. Then we force mode to impulse, because this is gonna be one frame call. So there we go. Now you can push stuff. Now in this scenario, we don't need the push stuff, but if you want to, this is how you implement this. Sometimes yeah, whatever. I was gonna talk more about whatever. Yeah, so we got on controller hit. So now we can do we can basically create an event if you want to, that basically says what we have collided with. But for now, we don't care about that. Yeah. One thing I will add is, before we do onMove method, is we're gonna add in a damage whoops. We're gonna add a eye on damage interface. So if you haven't worked with interface, basically interface is another way to enforce methods. It's very nifty for game development. And somehow okay, let's open this up and rename this. There we go. So I'm gonna just rename this IDamageable. There we go. And if you want to rename stuff, rename files or variables, then do Control R, Control R. That's basically you press Control R, then R again. That will allow you to rename stuff. So we're gonna remove all this stuff, and we're gonna replace the class keyword to our interface keyword, and we also want to remove the behavior, and we also want to remove our namespace over here. There we go. Now we're gonna implement some stuff. So this is basically how you can force class to implement some stuff. So we're gonna have public, we don't need to have public actually. We need to have void take damage, and we can do int damage. Now that is basically it, but one thing I do want in my method when we take damage is have an object called the sender. This basically means where we are taking our damage from. Is it from an enemy, a boss, NPC, environment, like if we have fall damage or whatever. So that's basically how you can tell if we're taking damage. Now one thing we can actually do also is implement a health system. So rather than just having a method for taking damage, we can also say int health, and we can do get. Because remember, we can't have just fields, we need to have property. This is property, if you didn't know. A field is basically, this is a field, this is a property. We also need a max health. And this is to, if we want to regenerate our health. So let's create another method to regenerate our health. Let's say heal, and int, and let's say amount. And there we go. Now if we go back to our base character, we can implement all this kind of stuff. So we can do IDamageable. And if you didn't know, you can press Control and dot. And this will basically give you a context menu. Then you can press enter on implement interfaces. And there we go. Now start off, we're gonna do a new variable over here, CLS field, int starting health. And I can put this 1000 because I feel like that is, I want to have a scale from 0 to 1000. So that's why. Now over here, we can basically just replace that with get and set. We can basically have a private over here. So we want to change our health from our base character. Now we can also make this protected instead of private. And we can do that same with our max health. There we go. And on take damage, we wanna take damage, so we can do health minus damage. And if health is below or equal to 0, then we're gonna do def. Now we haven't implemented that method, but we're gonna do soon. You can also specify to health be 0, so we don't go negative. Whatever. Yeah, in here we can basically spawn particles / or effects. So if you want to implement some other stuff over here, you can do them. In our health method, we can basically just specify health plus equals amount. And if health is higher than max health, then we basically we just set health to max health. There we go. Now one thing to keep in mind, this is an int, and we're adding an int. So let's say we are doing, let's say we have the time scale, basically how fast the game is running. Let's say we have it at 20%. Not 100, but 20%. The healing stuff will be faster in the slow process because it's moving at code speed. It's not dependent on the frame rate. So if you want it to be dependent on frame rate, then you need to do multiply time delta time. Now the only problem with that is because this is an int and not a float, you can't really do that. Now, sure, you can do cast this as an int. There we go. But that will not work because this is, if we take this as FPS, is 1 divided by we go, 1 divided by 60. So it should roughly be 0.00016, sorry. So it's like roughly there, right? So that means if we have a amount of 1, this will not be added because it's below 1 when we run it up to an int. So if you want to have a delta time, basically you want to have frame dependent, then you need to change the health to float, and you need to change this to a float, and all the other variables as well. But for now we don't care about frame dependency, so we just can add that. And there we go. Now we're gonna create a new method, gonna be called protector, and we're gonna do abstract, and we're gonna do void, then def. Now what this allows us to do is not implement any like function to this method, or like a body to this method. So we can do this in our player. So whenever we are creating a base character, we need to implement the def method. And this basically tells us how we want to do this. If we want to destroy our game object in a second, let's say 1 second, or we basically just want to disable our component, so like this. One thing you can also do in coding, in Visual Studio, or C# coding, is that you can, instead of having a code brackets or like curly brackets to signify code, you can basically have a number expression, which basically shows like this. So instead of having like 3 lines for one single code, you can basically have 1 line of code, which is pretty handy for being more readable. And if you want to return something, let's say void, let's say bool check, you can do just true. So you don't need to have a return keyword. But if you have multiple like curly brackets, you need to have return true in order to work. So keep that in mind. But there we go. So we got our base character. Now we can move on to move method. In a move method, I'm just gonna simply take a little bit of water. In a move method, we want to use a couple parameters. So first off, we want to use float horizontal. This is for horizontal input of our move method. Then we want to have vertical. Then we want to return some floats. So we use out float velocity. I'm just gonna move my cursor. Velocity dot set, then out float velocity dot x. Now we don't care about the y because it's just gravity parameter, or like it's gonna be the velocity on y is gonna be gravity, and then we don't really care about that. Now the reason why we want to return velocity y and velocity z, velocity z and velocity x, is if you want to use that on a animator. For example, let's say you're animating forward motion. Basically, if the character is running or standing still, then you can use velocity z, because it's on the forward axis, which is z axis. So that is pretty nifty if you want to use that. Now you don't need to use that, but hey. Now we're going to start off to initialize those variables to 0. Now you can do this at 1 line, but I like to have that in 2 lines. So you can do like this, which is basically the same. I like it to have like this instead. That's just preference. So yeah. Whoops. Okay, let's go down over here. Okay. So we're gonna do a boolean checking called is grounded. Now we don't have that yet, so we're gonna create that soon. We have physics, check sphere, transform position, and we're gonna have a raycast distance, so we can call this raycast distance. And then we need a ground mask. So I need to create some couple variables. So let's go over here. Let's do a public bool is ground get and do project set. Now we can do this private because we don't want the player to change if it's grounded or not. So that's good. Now I want to also create a over here to CLS field animator. Let's do ground layer mask. I'll call this ground mask. Now we also want to have a constant field, so we can do let's see, const float, call this raycast distance. Let's put this like 0.1. There we go. Now the reason why I put this as a const is because we are never going to change that variable. Now we can potentially just put this like this. Now you don't want to have imaginary numbers. Basically, if someone want to read this code, they also want to understand why this is 0.1. So it's better to use this in a scenario. It's the same thing, but it's more like readable as a outsider. Now one thing also, if we have a couple of variables, let's say input, and let's say vertical, and let's say 500, you might think, why the hell are we using 500? Like, is it a speed variable? Is it a multiply value? Is it a modify variable? What is it using, and why do we care? So that's why you want to mostly use constant variables for this scenario, so it's more readable and understandable. And we also want to have, if it's grounded, then we do velocity, which we don't have, dot y below 0. Then we set the velocity y to constant gravity. Now I will explain in a couple of seconds. So let's create a protected. There we go. Vector 3 column velocity. And let's change this as protected as well, so we can access that. We can also change this as protected. We don't need to have this, it's private. Okay, so we're gonna create a new const called constant gravity. Now this variable is basically gonna tell us how much gravity is gonna be a force to us. Now how this works is basically oh, whoops. Oh, I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, yeah. So we want to have this as -5, not 5. There we go. Yeah. So what this is basically is okay. So we have a character controller. Now the character controller on move method, we can do that over here for just explanation right now. But so if we go to controller.move, it doesn't take consideration about gravity. Now if you didn't do simple move, it would take care of gravity. Now sometimes you want to change the gravity and you want to have modified gravity and all that kind of stuff. So instead of just using a unit gravity, we can simply implement our move, basically have a velocity carrying about gravity in a sort of sense. Now when we are standing still, we still want to have apply a gravity, because if we then try to move a sort of slope, what will then happen, I'm just gonna check the camera so I'm view. So if we have a slope, then what will happen is if we don't have a gravity, constant gravity applied, then it will, let's say it's 0 here now, and will take slowly to gravity to apply before we back on track, right? But if we have -5 or -10, we're applying a negative velocity on the y-axis. So when we up going 1 frame, it will automatically apply our sort of velocity to our character downwards. Therefore, when I'm moving, it will be sort of more smooth stepping. So that's why we want to have a constant gravity for our player. And there we go. So now we got that. We can do float target speed, which I explained before. And if we want to do if sprinting, now this we don't have that as a variable. I don't think we can create a oh, we can. Yeah, so basically this generate property, simple. There we go. We want to have target speed to sprint speed, else we want to have target speed to walk speed. Then we want to have forward, VOD forward. It's gonna be camera forward. Then we want to have var right to be camera right. Now how this works is basically we are rotating our player from a camera perspective. So this is a third person controller if I didn't mention. And basically if we want to move character to the left or right, we're basically moving it from the camera's perspective. So let's say we are in front of the player. Then if we press left, it's going to turn right because it's inversed from our perspective. So keep that in mind. So we're going to want to do forward dot y 0 forward right y to 0. This is basically so we don't have any I don't know why, but it's like the whole thing is we can't move properly if we don't do that. I don't know why it's so weird, but hey, that's vector for you. After that, we want to do normalize these vectors. Then we want to take direction and take forward, multiply by our vertical, plus our right, multiply by horizontal. Then we want to take that direction and make it the z-axis to 0 and normalize it. There we go. Now after that, we want to do some stuff. Okay, so let's look at here. So we want to do speed. Take our speed, and here we go with the movements. So we take our speed and we basically go to our math class, move forwards, and we're going to move to our target. So we have target speed. Then we can take acceleration, multiply by time dot delta time. And this will slowly but surely move from our current speed to our target speed. It's then on lerping. What lerp does, we do mathf.lerp. If we take this, let's say we have 0 as our current speed, and we take 1 as a target. If we take 0.5, what it basically is, it will take the target speed or the target value and multiply by this, so we get 0.5, or sort of it will basically crossfade to that value. So it will take it will output 0.5, and if we did 0.25, it's the same. So basically lerp is crossfading a variable, and move forwards is basically moving to that value from a constant speed or whatever. After that, we can do velocity plus equals physics dot gravity multiplied by time dot delta time. And this is how we apply our gravity. After that, we want to do if direction is not vector 3 0. Oops. Why, I don't know why it does that. Vector 3.0, there we go. We're gonna do transform.rotation, and here we're gonna rotate our player to that direction we are facing to. So we can do controller slurp, transform.rotation, controller look rotation, direction, and we can do turn speed, which we can apply in the inspector. So times.delta time. There we go. So let's go back to our over here to yeah, we can put it over here, and let's do turn speed. Let's put this at 10 for now. There we go. And now we want to apply our movement. So let's do var movement is direction multiplied by time dot delta time times dot speed. Then we can do controller dot movement plus velocity times delta time. This is just because velocity is in meter per second, and we want the acceleration. So therefore, we need to multiply by time dot delta time to get that actual acceleration instead of having a velocity. I think. I'm not sure, but I believe that's why. The last thing I'm gonna do is basically get our variable to our animator. So let's say velocity.z is vector3 dot transform dot forward and direction. We can do that simply with our character. We can also do that with the velocity x as well. We just change transform dot right. There we go. So now we got everything complete then. Now one thing I like to do is simplify this method if we want to just have a vector2 as an input. So we can basically do public void move, and we can do vector2 vector2 movement, and we can do out float velocity y, velocity z and x. And we can simply call move with the movement x and movement y, and then do out velocity z and out velocity x. Now if you don't care about certain variables, you can simply, let's say we don't care about velocity x but only velocity y, z, we want to basically discard this variable. Now there's a keyword that basically does that, which is underscore. Underscore is a discard keyword. Basically it means we don't care about this parameter, this out parameter, so we don't care. So yeah, basically we don't care about that, so we discard it. So basically you can do this, but for now we like to have our velocity x as well. So in the player we can then do void update and take a move, and now we can implement our move method. So I'm just gonna simply put on the script, which I'm just gonna take this over here. There we go. Let's look at it here. Yes, perfect. So now we can get our variable. So let's do firstly we need a required component. This is gonna be player input, and this is gonna using the new input system. We can make a reference for this, and we can do void wake. I like to have this def method down below everything, so like this. Then we can do private void. Remember we need to overwrite this wake, and let's do simply with update method as well. protected override update. There we go. So in our wake method, we can basically say try get component input out input. Here we go. Now there we go. Now we can simply just do move, and we can do input action, and we can do move. We can do either move or movement. We can do move for now. Then we can do read value as vector2. And for now we don't care about these variables, so we can discard those. There we go. That's simply it. So now we can move our character. If we want to sprint with our character, we can do is sprinting. And we can do input action is sprinting. We can either do is trigger, or we can do read value as a float and call it if it's not 0, which basically converts to a boolean. Now we can't do that because it's not is a private set, so we need to change that to protected set. Protected. There we go. We can make it space for that as well. There we go. So now we can sprint and we can also move our character. Now the last thing we want to do is basically add our inputs. And that's simply it. So I'm gonna just add the inputs, but I'm gonna end this sort of demo or like video over here because I haven't imported models, and to import models would take more time, and I need to prepare for that as well. But for now we can just do the inputs, and I can show it's working. So let's go over here to input action. Let's call this user controls. This is a new keyboard, so sorry for typing stuff wrong. User come on. User control. User control. Oh my god. Controls. There we go. We can open this up with double clicking, and we can add a method, action map, sorry, called player. We can call this player controls or player. It doesn't really matter. Or like player map. You can control what you want to call this. Let's do player map. Then you can add an action called move. This is going to be a value of vector2. So let's remove this and add a new one. And we're going to do add a vector2 composite, which we can have vest and D. So up is going to be W. Down is going to be S. And left is going to be A. And D is going to be, sorry, right is going to be D. There we go. And we can also add a new component or like vector. Call this arrow keys, and we can do arrow. Okay, let's do this. There we go. Up arrow, down arrow. There we go. Left arrow. Now you don't need to use arrows if you don't want to use that in your game. But for now we can use that. And there we go. So now we can close that one, and we can create our player over here. So let's do a queue. Call this player. There we go. Remove. We can remove our collider, and we can use player. And when we add a player, everything is going to be added. So over here, we can select our player controller to this. And we can select player mapping, and there we go. And now we can also change our character controller, how our player wanna be fit, is the height and radius correct, and all that kind of stuff. And we're gonna have a ground mask, which is gonna be default for now. There we go. So now let's create a ground. Let's do a plane. Now let's put our player over here. Now we can also simply just add a component, which can have look at constraint active, and we're gonna have our player over here. So now we can look at our player, and there we go. So let's try to move our player. Now it can be hard to see because everything is white. One thing we have is an error because we didn't remove this, because for now we don't have a sprint key. You can add that, but for now we don't really care about sprinting. So we should now be able to move our character. Yes, we can move. Awesome. Now you can add more stuff into your game, or like the base character and the eye damage stuff and the player character stuff. But for now, I feel like it's working pretty fine. And if you want to modify it, like I said, then go for it. Now we didn't add animator, and we didn't add models, and we didn't add jump buttons, but the principle goes the same. One thing I don't well, specifically in my game, I used animator more than a when I, for example, when I jump in my character in my game, I don't use physics. I use rather animation. Now, one thing I can show you with the animation is implementing this function, because it's very simple function. So let's do that for now. So over here we can go to create a new method. Call this let's see. Call this private void on animator move. This is basically gonna trigger us when we are moving our animator. So we need a var delta. We can do animator, not delta position. We can call this delta position or delta. It doesn't really matter in this scenario. We don't care about the y value. We're gonna take a var velocity of our delta divided by time.delta. Now in this scenario it's perfectly fine, because velocity, because we have a new sort of variable called velocity, it doesn't really get like hooked up with our current like name variable outside our function. So if we were to do that, then it will replace the value from our velocity value. So what we can do is just call this underscore velocity, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but for now, to be more specified, I can do that. Then we simply just move our character controller from our velocity with the time.delta. There we go. So now if we jump with our character with that animation, it will then move our character from the animation, you know, from the height animation is jumping from. So in a sense, we are jumping without physics, but we are jumping from animation from our character controller. It's a little hard to explain, but hopefully you understand. But yeah, man, thank you for watching. It's been almost 1 hour. God damn. If you like this video and want to see more, hopefully my voice should get better as soon as I talk like this much. It's a little bit complicated to explain some stuff, but hopefully you find it's very helpful. And sorry for my mouse has died. I don't know why. I tried to research. If you have any like fixes or like tips, then please comment down below, because my Razer adder, def adder is now it's not working, and I try other mices, but it's not working at all. So anyway, I also want to ask you if you like this coding, because I've seen other people code and they basically have multiple spaces, weird typing, they do comments like that you don't really care about, and they do weird stuff that it doesn't really make sense. This virtual update doesn't really make sense, and we can actually do this one line either with our body. Just simply do this and it looks much nicer. But for example, the other player or other creator would have like spaces over here, then do stuff over here like killing there we go. Like, it's so annoying for me to watch other people code, because sometimes people don't really care about structure, and I care very much code structure. But yeah, hopefully you learned you something. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video or live stream. So yeah, take care and have a good night or evening or whatever. Bye bye.